Hello veterans, this is Dennis Young with the Veterans Memorial Park and Digital Library, and I am here at the fifth day of the 123rd National VFW Convention, and we came across a young lady named of Pamela Gayheart Walston. Alright, and she decided to come in here and want to talk to us, and she's got a very interesting story that I think you're all going to enjoy to see. Pamela, could you spell your last name for us?
Yes, it's my last name is spelled Gayheart Walsten.
All right, Pamela. So, welcome. Have you enjoyed yourself here?
Yes, I have.
Great. So, we're gonna go back a few years if you want, because we're doing little snapshots of people, of veterans and their history, and just kind of do something that's kind of preserve you for a little bit.
Okay.
And because this will be online and everybody knows. So let's go back, like where you grew up, your parents were, and then we'll go with how you got into the military, and then we'll go from there when you're done with that part.
Okay, so my father, Ishmael Gayheart, was born in Lookout, Kentucky, and then his family moved down to Fairborn, Ohio. He is the oldest of 8 kids on my dad's side of the family. He was in World War II, and he was stationed in Germany. And what little I know about my dad's time in service is what he was actually told me. So he was in the Battle of the Bulge in 1945. He got over there in the Ardennes Forest, and then he was the group of soldiers that were going to go into Berlin. So he crossed the Rhine River in Germany, and come to find out his cousin was on the bridge crossing the Rhine River, and my dad was in a boat trying to cross the Rhine River, and then the boat went too fast and it landed on the bank of of the Rhine River. So he was the group of army soldiers that joined up with the Russians at the Elbe River. Okay, and then the Russians went into Berlin, and the only thing my dad had to say about that is they shouldn't have let the Russians go into Berlin. That was his biggest story. So the interesting part is that my dad got out of the service, and then he rejoined in 1946. He got out in 45, went back in 46. He met my mom in Texas. They got married in Texas. And then my mom went back to Germany, and after World War II, and they adopted me, and they adopted my brother and my sister. We're all three from different families, and we're all naturalized citizens from Germany. And I have found that my biological mother, I have found my biological sister, and I have a niece and a nephew that I didn't even know that I had. Okay, so the Gayheart family started out in Lookout, Kentucky. Okay, and then they eventually moved to Fairborn, Ohio. And then my dad joined the military in towards the end of 1944, and then he ended up in Germany. So I have quite a few of my, and then my dad got out of the service in El Paso, Texas. I'm an Army brat. So I went to school in Germany. I went to school in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. My dad was there for 6 years in Fort Sill, and then we moved to El Paso, Texas, at Fort Bliss, and he retired from Fort Bliss. And then he had a hard time getting a job. Try to imagine retiring with a wife and 3 kids from the military and not being able to make ends meet. And that's exactly what happened. And he had disability too. But he didn't make enough money from retirement and disability to support his family. So he worked for Border Patrol. Okay. He worked for university. And he was also a cab driver. And this is all in El Paso, Texas. And so then his family convinced my dad to move to Fairborn, and that's exactly what we did. We moved to Fairborn, Ohio, and I went to school there. I went to junior high, went to the 9th grade there, and then I went to, my sophomore year there, and then we moved to Michigan, Milan, Michigan, and then my dad was working at General Motors, okay, and then we moved to Milan, Michigan, which is where I graduated from high school. So my dad died in 2014. They had moved down to Georgia. My dad and my mom moved everywhere, even after the kids grew up. All right, they moved quite a bit, and so they moved down to Georgia. And my father, and then they ended up back in Ohio. It gets weird, and so my dad and my mom died in Ohio, and they're both buried at the cemetery in Fairborn, Ohio. So my brother's buried there, my mom's buried there, my father's buried there. I had 3 uncles, and they're all buried there, which includes my dad, and they're all buried in Fairborn, Ohio Cemetery. And so our family has a long history of being military. I have 2 cousins, women on my dad's side of the family that were in the Women's Army Corps during World War II. And I found out about that when I went to the Women's Military Museum in Arlington Cemetery in D.C. And we didn't know that. Okay, so I still have family on the Gayheart side of the family. I still have some aunts that still live up there, and cousins that still live up there. They live in Fairborn. I had aunt and uncle that lived in Xenia, another one who lived in Beaver Creek. All lived in Ohio. And then I found out the movie star Rebecca Gayheart is my cousin, and she was born in Lookout, Kentucky as well. All right.
Interesting.
My grandfather was Amos Gayheart. So we have the German spelling of our last name and not the American spelling of our last name. And his family immigrated from Germany to the U.S. And that's how we kept the German spelling of our last name. So I joined the service. Okay, in 1972, up in Detroit, Michigan, Women's Army Corps. I did basic training at Fort McClellan, Alabama. I was medical. I also did my what we call corpsman training in Fort Sam in San Antonio, Texas. And then I did my nurses training in San Francisco, California in 73 through 74. You're not going to find a better city to be stationed at. Okay, I loved it in San Francisco. So then I went from there, I got sent to South Korea, and I was there from 74 to 75. I was a nurse at the 121 Evac Hospital in Seoul. And I was one of the first 5 enlisted women to be sent to South Korea, because before that there were only RNs, which were lieutenants, were officers, but there was no enlisted women. And it got great after that. We had more of us. And the funny part was they had no idea where to put us, where they didn't have women's barracks. But it was an interesting place to be stationed, and I did, a lot of good stuff. I learned a lot, and I've been up to the DMZ. I've been in helicopters. I've been in jeeps. I've been in deuce and halves. I learned how to drive a stick when I was in the Army. Of course, we don't talk about the ambulance that was a stick drive that I put in reverse and put it in a ditch in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. No, not Fort Sill, Fort A.P. Hill, Virginia. So anyway, it was interesting. And when I got out from the service in 75, you might find this interesting, they did not allow women to join the VFW until 1978.
Interesting. So yours of service was 72 to 75?
Yeah.
Okay, 3 years. Okay.
Yeah. So Women's Army Corps, and then so when I got out of the service, I went back to college. Okay, I was pre-med, I have a bachelor, and I've moved everywhere, long just being an Army brat, but for myself too, being Army. And so I went back to college, and I got my Bachelor of Arts degree in biology. I was pre-med. Then I ended up going to graduate school at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of moved around a bit. You know, I graduated from grad school and have a PhD and did a lot of research and science and love it.
So did you work for hospitals and then for a living after the military?
Nope. I worked as a nurse for a while when I got out. I got bored and decided to go back to college. I'd already had a year of college, and so before I joined the service, and but I decided to go back to college. I didn't want to be a nurse. I was bored.
All right.
So,
So what did you do then after the military?
Well, I went to college.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I did is I have a, it's going to be long, but I have a PhD in cardiovascular pharmacology and physiology. I got interested in that because I worked as a nurse in coronary care at High Point Hospital in North Carolina.
Okay.
All right. And I was bored, so I went back to college and I got my PhD. And then I ended up working, I did research for a while down in Texas. I actually ended up working in what they call contract research organization. And what that is that we do the work that's required by the FDA. And part of the group of scientists that went out and gave a lecture to the FDA on safety pharmacology, which is something that I did. And my expertise is cardiovascular. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So what year did you join the VFW then?
I finally joined the VFW in, 1996.
Oh, okay.
And I was qualified to join because I had the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal
Out of Korea.
out of Korea,
Mhm.
and it's considered hostile, which it still is.
It still is. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So I was over there in South Korea when Pak Chung-hee, I guess he was, what do they call him, the leader? I forget what the title is, but assassination attempt, and he got his wife instead. So I was stationed over there when that happened. And see, what else can I say about myself?
So what do you do for the VFW then? I see you have a white hat on, so you must have been an All-American.
Yes.
Or an All-State. So have you been a commander?
Yes, I was the first female commander at my post.
Okay, and which post is that again?
5789.
Out of Missouri.
Out of Missouri. It's
Okay.
in Lee Summit. And it's 70-something year history. And now there's been a total of 3 posts in my district, District 5, that are now, we've had women commanders for the first time.
Right. Are you still the commander there?
No, I'm not. No.
This is past.
It was back in 2016.
Okay. And then, so what do you do now for the VFW? What kind of things do you do now?
Well, most of the stuff is, I'm also part of the District 5, our post is, and I was an adjutant there. My biggest thing for the VFW is youth activities, volunteer services. I'm really big on mentoring, young students. We support a group in Lee Summit called Prodeo, which is at-risk high school students. I've tutored there. We provide lunches for them in the summer. We support the homeless shelter for veterans. It's at Benelli Hall in Kansas City, Missouri, which is supported by the VA. I have a budget, and I can go and buy them things like, excuse me, like fresh fruit, vegetables. I can buy them like the t-shirts and the underwear and the glove and the sheets and towels all have to be new, and I buy that for them, and it's in my budget to do that. We also, part of youth activities, we support 2 baseball teams in Lee Summit, Boys Baseball League in Lee Summit. And, if it's something I can volunteer for or go out and do, I do it. I've always volunteered from the time I got out of the service. I was a big sister in Greensboro, and I tutored a young kid that was in the 2nd grade that couldn't read.
Outstanding.
Yeah, and we were
That's
all,
it.
my husband and I were also foster parents.
Is your husband a member of the VFW as well?
No, he's not military.
Gotcha.
His
Okay.
brother was, though. His
Okay,
brother
is he
was,
part of the auxiliary?
Yes, he is.
Oh, good.
But we
good.
don't talk about that. He's like, why am I doing this? I said, because your wife is the commander of the post and you need to be a member of the auxiliary.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, like I said, my brother-in-law was in Vietnam as well. He was a Marine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Outstanding. So how long have you been in Missouri then now?
We moved here in 2003.
Okay.
It's the longest
Are you
place-
planning on staying?
Yeah. It's the longest place I have ever lived in my entire life. Isn't that amazing? 18 years.
Wow. So you know, you name Gayheart, and we have good friends, you know, Fairborn
Yes.
that are Gayheart. So I'm waiting to hear back from them to see.
If we're related.
Yeah, see if you're related. That'd be really interesting, though, and it's pretty nice and to
Yes.
meet somebody from our hometown as well. And we met another interviewee that we did that was from our hometown in Greenville,
Oh, wow.
which was he actually went to school the same time we did, so it was pretty interesting.
Mhm.
Anything else you'd like to say or put out there to everybody? Because you know everyone's just going to be online. Everybody's going to see it.
Well, the one thing that I people talk about what it's like to be an Army brat or a military brat. I have some friends that are also military brats. The one thing that's interesting about being a military brat is that you go to different schools. Okay?
I was too. It's very true.
Yeah, and by the time I got to high school, I mean, I was far advanced in my education by going to the different schools than people who did not. And my friends tell me they saw this, they saw the same thing. You know, their education was different. We were further advanced in our education. I was taking like advanced prep school classes in high school, although I didn't do well in geometry. That was a mistake.
All right, well, thank you so much, and thank you for stopping in here. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
Well, it was nice to come in because I want people to know about my family history and my father.
All right.